So in order to understand mushrooms, we need to understand what they are and how they behave. So as organisms. And so the bit we're looking for today, the bit that kind of pokes out of the ground, the mushroom, or pokes out of the tree, the bracket, these are just the fruiting body of the fungi. These are just the bit that handles the reproduction. They're the equivalent of an apple on an apple tree or a flower on a plant. They're just there to distribute the spores. And all fungi use spores. So all fungi reproduce by creating billions and billions of tiny, tiny little seeds, effectively called spores, and they distribute those. And they distribute them in lots of different ways, but most of them will just distribute them into the air and let the air do the job of distributing them around and spreading them. So that's what the mushroom that we're looking for is doing. That's what its purpose is. And the bit you can't see, the rest of the fungi, the rest of the organism, is usually hidden underground, out of sight, or in the tree bark. And it is made up of tiny, tiny threads known as hyphae. These are incredibly thin threads that grow and expand and are exploring out underneath the soil. And they bundle together and create something called mycelium. And mycelium becomes visible to the naked eye. It's like almost like cotton wool style threads that you can see it right at the base of the mushroom when you pick it. That's the mycelium, and that is underground, and it can be quite large networks. I mean, there's some really vast networks of mycelium, and that is the organism. That is the fungi itself. That is actually the bit beyond the mushroom that we don't see. And what it's doing when it's underground is it's snurgling about, going off in different directions, and it's feeding, it's absorbing nutrients from the soil. But it's also, and really importantly, looking to connect with other species, particularly plants, where it's trying to create a symbiotic relationship, an exchange of goods. And this is a really important thing to understand with mushrooms. And it's the reason that when you go mushroom foraging, you're always going to go to somewhere green, woodlands or grasslands. These are the kind of places, and the more natural and the more undisturbed by humans and pesticides and those sorts of things, the better, because mycelium is incredibly responsive to its environment, and it will react and change according to where it is and the things around it, the plants around it. So it's estimated that more than 90% of all plants on Earth rely on mycelium. They rely on this connection to fungi, and that connection is known as a mycorrhizal connection. And mycorrhizal means, myco means mushroom or fungi, and rhizal means root. So it's the combination of where plants' roots meet the fungal network underground, and they connect together, they bond together. And what happens is the mycelium, so the fungi, is able to pick up nutrients from the soil and pass those to trees and plants that the trees and plants otherwise wouldn't be able to pick up. So things like phosphorus, for example, can be exchanged with the tree or the plant through the mycelial network, through the fungi. And in return, they'll get something back from those plants, and particularly from trees, where trees photosynthesize. They're incredibly good at it. That's the one thing fungi can't do, is photosynthesize. So things like carbon, they can't produce that. And so they'll get that from the tree or from the plant. And this exchange of goods is known as a symbiotic relationship. And so fungi almost always have some kind of symbiotic relationship with other plants, and particularly trees. So in order to forage for mushrooms, you need to understand the wider natural world. And it's one of the best forms of foraging for that reason, because it gives us a real sense of how interconnected the whole natural world is. And understanding and recognizing certain plants and certain trees will help you identify and recognize certain fungi.